Day 1. Displaced. The sterile walls of the lab are a distant memory. Lush greenery, an emerald labyrinth, stretches as far as the eye can see. Gone are the familiar hums and beeps of the Chrono Drive facility, replaced by the cacophony of an alien world. The air, thick with humidity, carries unfamiliar chirps and rustling sounds that send shivers down my spine. It's been a day, or maybe longer. Time seems to have warped in this prehistoric nightmare. The activation sequence went catastrophically wrong. One moment, I was finalizing the calibrations. The next, this, stranded, lost. Evans, that pompous peacock, is fuming. His initial bravado replaced by a steely fear that mirrors my own. The Compsognathus, our supposed target, is nowhere to be seen. Did it survive the jump? Did it even activate the targeted time period? The silence is punctuated by the occasional snap of a twig or the rustle of leaves in the unseen undergrowth. My imagination conjures monstrous shapes lurking within the dense foliage. Every shadow feels like a predator, every sound a harbinger of doom. The once controlled environment of the lab feels like a lifetime ago. Here, the elements rule. Hunger gnaws at my stomach, thirst parches my throat. We scavenged some berries, their taste unfamiliar on my tongue, but enough to keep the worst of it at bay. Shelter for the night seems like an impossible dream, but fear fuels ingenuity. We managed to string together some branches and leaves, a flimsy barrier, but hopefully enough to deter smaller creatures. The biggest fear, however, isn't the unknown creatures of this jungle, but the very fabric of time itself. Have we fractured the timeline? Created a paradox? Sleep, when it comes, is filled with visions of the lab imploding, the raptor's chilling glint in its eyes, Evan's accusing glare. Waking up feels no better. This is a harsh reality, and the fight for survival has just begun. Tomorrow, I will try to contact the facility, send a distress signal, anything. We can't stay here. But the overwhelming question remains, will there be a tomorrow, or are we forever lost in this prehistoric abyss? Day 2. Primal fear of the sun. A merciless white disk in the unfamiliar sky beat down relentlessly. My throat feels like sandpaper, and the meager berries from yesterday offered little relief. Evans remains a tense presence, constantly muttering under his breath. The precarious shelter we built offers scant protection from the elements, and every rustle in the undergrowth sends a jolt of fear through me. This morning, hope flickered briefly. I managed to salvage a few components from the wreckage of the Chrono Drive control panel. Hours of tinkering yielded nothing fruitful, but frustration fueled my determination. The device might be a wreck, but maybe there's a way to cobble together a distress beacon, a primitive signal that could pierce the fabric of time and reach the facility. Inspiration struck when I stumbled upon a strange, crystal-like rock formation. Could it be a natural energy source? A long shot, but desperation breeds ingenuity. With trembling hands, I fashioned a rudimentary circuit, connecting the scavenged components to the crystal. A surge of hope coursed through me as a faint glow emanated from the contraption. It wasn't much, but it was a sign, a beacon in the darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, menacing shadows, the jungle came alive with a symphony of unknown sounds. The chirps and rustles of the day were replaced by eerie screeches and guttural growls. The air grew colder, and a primal fear gnawed at my insides. Then we saw it. A pair of glowing eyes, flickering in the distance. Not small, like a predator we might encounter back home. These eyes were large, reptilian, filled with a cold, calculating malice. The silhouette emerged slowly from the undergrowth. A raptor, larger than any creature I'd ever seen in a museum or a documentary. Its serrated claws clicked on the forest floor, and the ground seemed to vibrate with its every step. Evans fumbled with a discarded stun gun from the lab, its effectiveness against such a creature a cruel joke. We stood frozen, a flicker of despair extinguishing the embers of hope. The raptor stalked closer, its predatory gaze locked on us. Suddenly, a deafening screech erupted from deep within the jungle, a sound that shook the very leaves on the trees. The raptor froze, its head swiveling towards the source of the sound. For a brief, agonizing moment, it hesitated. Then, with a guttural snarl, it turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving us trembling in its wake. We didn't sleep that night. The fire we managed to coax to life offered little comfort, its flickering light casting grotesque shadows all around us. The echoes of the unknown screeches continued to reverberate in the silence. leaving us to wonder what horrors lurked beyond our meager refuge. Day 2 has ended, another battle for survival won, but the war is far from over. This prehistoric jungle holds secrets, both beautiful and terrifying. We are just visitors here, unwelcome guests in a world ruled by instinct and primal fear. Day 3, a fragile alliance. The relentless sun beat down on another day in this prehistoric purgatory. My body ached from sleeping on the unforgiving forest floor, and the gnawing hunger seemed to be a constant companion. Exhaustion gnawed at my resolve, but the memory of the raptor's chilling eyes steeled my nerves. We had to find a way out. The rudimentary beacon I cobbled together yesterday remained stubbornly inert. The strange crystal pulsed with a faint glow, but it wasn't enough. Dejected, I tossed a pebble into the distance, the sound echoing through the silent trees. "It's no use, Patel." Evan's voice cut through the oppressive silence. He looked haggard, his once pristine lab coat ripped and muddied. "We're stranded here." There was a raw vulnerability in his voice that surprised me. For the first time since our predicament began, a flicker of empathy sparked within me. We were on opposite sides of the scientific battlefield back in our own time, but here, in this unforgiving wilderness, we were simply two humans clinging to survival. "Maybe not," I said, surprising myself. I explained about the beacon and the strange crystal, a spark of hope flickering in my voice. Evans, for all his bluster, possessed a sharp mind. Perhaps together, we could make this contraption work. The rest of the day was spent in a tense, yet oddly collaborative effort. Evans, to his credit, proved to be resourceful. He scavenged a length of insulated wire from the wreckage of the chrono drive, his movements surprisingly nimble for a man who spent most of his time behind a computer screen. As the day bled into dusk, we managed to attach the wire to the crystal, a makeshift conductor to channel its energy. Tentatively, I flipped a salvage switch. The beacon sputtered to life, a brilliant beam of light lancing skyward. Was it enough? We didn't know. But for the first time since our arrival, a sliver of hope pierced the oppressive despair. The jungle symphony resumed as night fell, the familiar chorus of unknown creatures filling the air. This time, however, the sounds didn't send shivers down my spine. We were in this together, an unlikely alliance forged in the crucible of survival. Evans huddled closer to the fire, its meager warmth offering a sense of solace. "Thank you, Patel," he muttered, his voice barely audible. I simply nodded, the flickering firelight reflecting in my tired eyes. Day 3 had brought a fragile truce, a glimmer of hope, and a shared fear of what lurked in the shadows beyond the firelight. The fight for survival continued, but tonight, at least, we weren't alone. Day 4. Echoes from the past Day 4 dawned with a heavy mist clinging to the forest floor. The air was thick with an unfamiliar scent, sweet and cloying, that sent a shiver down my spine. The gnawing hunger had become a persistent ache, and the makeshift shelter offered little protection from the elements. The beacon, our beacon of hope from yesterday, lay silent. The faint glow from the strange crystal had dimmed considerably, and the cobbled-together circuit looked more like a desperate attempt than a viable solution. Disappointment gnawed at the fragile optimism we'd fostered. Evans, silent and withdrawn, sat huddled by the dying embers of the fire. The once proud scientist seemed to have shrunk under the weight of our predicament. "Maybe the facility gave up on us," he mumbled, his voice devoid of hope. I refused to give in to despair. Survival hinged on action, not resignation. Grabbing a salvaged metal shard from the chrono drive wreckage, I ventured deeper into the jungle, a desperate hope flickering within me. Perhaps there were materials here, in this alien world, that could enhance the beacon. The deeper I ventured, the denser the foliage became. The sunlight barely penetrated the thick canopy, casting long, distorted shadows. The air grew heavy with the cloying sweetness I'd noticed earlier. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent my heart pounding in my chest. Then I saw it. Nestled amongst the gnarled roots of a giant tree, shimmering with an otherworldly glow, were clusters of bioluminescent mushrooms. Could this be the answer? Tentatively, I plucked one, its luminescence pulsing softly in my hand. A sudden screech pierced the air, sharp and close. I whirled around, my heart hammering against my ribs. A small, feathered creature, unlike anything I'd ever seen, perched on a nearby branch, its eyes fixed on me. Was this the source of the sweet, cloying scent? Before I could ponder further, the creature screeched again, launching itself into the air. Moments later, the unmistakable thundering of footsteps vibrated through the earth. Panic surged through me. Without a second thought, I turned and sprinted back towards the makeshift camp, the pulsing mushroom clutched tightly in my hand. Emerging into the clearing, I saw Evan scrambling to his feet, a look of terror etched on his face. A tremor shook the ground as a colossal creature emerged from the trees. It was a herbivore, unlike anything I'd ever seen in a textbook. Its massive body, covered in leathery skin, lumbered past our camp, its long neck reaching high into the canopy to devour leaves. The tremor subsided, and the monstrous creature continued its slow procession deeper into the jungle. We stood there, shaken but unharmed. Back at the camp, I showed Evans the bioluminescent mushroom, its faint glow pulsing in the fading sunlight. "It might work," he murmured, a flicker of hope rekindled in his eyes. Together, we dismantled the beacon and carefully incorporated the glowing mushroom. As dusk settled, we flipped the salvage switch, holding our breath. The beacon sputtered, then blazed to life with renewed intensity. The bioluminescent mushroom, pulsing in rhythm with the device, cast an eerie green glow across the clearing. Was it a stronger signal? We didn't know, but it was a change, and in this desperate situation, any change was a welcome one. As the jungle symphony filled the night air, a different sound reached our ears. A faint, rhythmic thump that seemed to originate from deep within the forest. Was it our imagination, or was it footsteps? Day 4 had brought a renewed hope, a terrifying encounter, and a sound that sent shivers down our spines, leaving us with a chilling premonition of what might await us in the days to come. Day 5, echoes of discovery. Day 5 dawned tense and oppressive. The rhythmic thumping that had filled the night air the previous evening lingered in our minds, a constant reminder of the unknown lurking in the depths of the jungle. The bioluminescent beacon pulsed reassuringly, a beacon of both hope and desperate yearning. Hunger gnawed at our bellies, a constant companion in this harsh wilderness. We scavenged for edible berries and roots. Our knowledge gleaned from ancient survival guides, a desperate lifeline. As we ate, a tense silence hung between us. "Do you think that sound?" Evans began, his voice barely a whisper. I nodded, not needing to elaborate. The rhythmic thump could have been anything, a large herbivore perhaps, but the primal fear in our gut told a different story. Determined to distract ourselves from the gnawing fear and hunger, we decided to explore further into the jungle. Perhaps there were clues, resources, or even a sign of intelligent life that could aid our escape. The deeper we ventured, the denser the foliage became. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, casting an eerie green glow through the bioluminescent flora that dotted the undergrowth. The air grew thick and humid, and the chirps and screeches of unseen creatures filled the air. Suddenly, Evan stopped, his eyes widening in surprise. Partially hidden beneath a massive tree root lay a cluster of smooth, black stones. They weren't like any rocks I'd ever seen, perfectly round and surprisingly light. Curiosity piqued. I picked one up. It felt warm to the touch, and a faint hum seemed to emanate from within. "What are these?" Evans asked, his voice filled with wonder. I shook my head, unable to answer. Could these be some sort of prehistoric tool? Or something more? As we debated, a flash of movement from the corner of my eye caught my attention. A small, reptilian creature darted across a clearing, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intelligence. We froze, a primal fear gripping us. Was it a predator or something more curious? Before we could react, the creature vanished into the undergrowth, leaving behind only a lingering sense of unease. Returning to the camp, we examined the strange stones further. The faint hum seemed to intensify when held close together. Could they be a source of energy? A way to amplify the beacon's signal? Hope, a fragile flame, flickered within me. Nightfall descended, cloaking the jungle in an inky blackness. The rhythmic thumping from the previous night had ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence. We huddled closer to the fire, the pulsing beacon casting an eerie green glow across the clearing. Suddenly, a distant screech shattered the silence. It wasn't the raptor's guttural roar, but something else, something far more primal. A low growl echoed in response, sending shivers down our spines. The ground trembled faintly, and a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. Day 5 had brought a glimmer of hope with the strange stones, but it had also brought a chilling realization. We were not alone in this prehistoric world. There were other creatures, unseen and unheard, and the night was far from over. As we, huddled by the dwindling fire, the echoes of the unknown screeches filled the air, a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurked beyond the flickering light